TRW, the early Great Battles of the American Civil War series. Looking just at the standard rules using a few formations from A Gleam of Bayonets, Battle of Antietam. We are here obviously by the West Woods, Dunkard Church, and the Bloody Lane is off the screen about 4 hexes here in this direction. Let's talk about melee. Let's talk first about retreat before melee. I'm going to have this Union Regiment, 21st New York, try to melee the Hampton Legion there, but the Hampton Legion is going to try to retreat before melee. And over here we'll have these 2 Union regiments try to melee the Confederates pinned there in that raised cornfield there, 1st Texas. Alright, so retreat before melee phase. So the phasing player announces, so this is the retreat before melee phase, which is before the melee phase itself. You actually declare the melees in the retreat before melee phase. So actually I just did declare my 2 melees. Then the non-phasing player has the option to retreat units that are in the zone of control of enemy units 1 or 2 hexes, thus avoiding melee. Again, Hampton Legion is going to attempt that. The retreating units undergo withdrawal fire, and the owning player must roll for possible rout at the end of the retreat, whether a casualty has been suffered as a result of their withdrawal fire or not. The phasing player may advance a unit into the vacated hex. Alright. Continuing on with just melee in general, then after the retreat before melee phase, actually let me see if I can do the Hampton Legion right now. Let's see, retreat. This is withdrawal fire if a friendly unit leaves an enemy controlled hex during the friendly movement phase or the friendly retreat. That's not it. Where is it? Withdrawal fire takes place in the movement phase and the retreat before melee phase, not during any fire phase. Withdrawal fire is not considered part of any fire phase, and units that use withdrawal fire may fire regularly during any fire phase in that player turn. Withdrawal fire is in effect a free shot, but note, remember to check your ammunition depletion, which we will definitely be getting to because it's great. When a unit triggers withdrawal fire, it may be fired on once by every eligible enemy unit. There's no limit. Alright. What I'm getting at is where, or how do I actually do withdrawal before melee? That must be part of melee. Melee combat. Restrictions on ability to engage in melee. Well, let's look at the procedure maybe. Is it there? No. Retreat before melee. Alright, there's a separate section that's under the melee chapter. During the retreat before melee phase, the attacking player must announce which defending units he intends to melee. The defending player must either immediately exercise his option of retreat before melee, if it is available to him, or declare that he will accept a melee. The non-phasing retreating player may move any unit subject to melee 1 or 2 hexes away from the hex they're in. So it's, okay, I'm trying to look to see if I roll first. I guess I don't. I move first. So he's just going to go back 1 like that. 1 or 2 hexes away from the hex they're in. Retreating units may not enter an enemy ZOC. They didn't. Units that retreat before melee are subject to withdrawal fire. The owning player must conduct a morale check for retreating units before melee, regardless of whether or not they are fired upon by withdrawal fire. What? So there is a morale check. When? May move any unit subject to melee 1 or 2 hexes away. Alright, come on. When? Alright, a unit A unit which a player attempts to retreat before melee, which is pinned by withdrawal fire, may not be retreat. Okay, so the fire must happen before they leave. Units that retreat before melee are subject to withdrawal fire. The owning player must conduct a morale check for retreating units before melee. Oh, retreating units before melee, regardless of whether or not they are fired upon by withdrawal fire. Exception to Okay, is it just implied that if they fail their morale check, they don't withdraw? Now let's do the withdrawal fire first, because that sounds like that's just standard. 4, 8. No, it's still a small unit, so there's still one to the left. So it's still 7, 8, 10 column down to 4 to 6 column. 4. Okay, it is an R result. So we do the morale check. But why would we see they pass? So they're fine. No effect. That was withdrawal fire. So why is there another morale check? Regardless of whether or not they are fired upon by withdrawal fire. I don't know about that. I don't know. Okay, this doesn't. So they pass anyways, but and he gets to advance. Does he get to change facing? Phasing units may be advanced into a hex vacated by a unit retreating before melee by any units that were going to melee the retreating units. The advancing units are still bound by the stacking restrictions. A unit so advanced they may not initiate melee in that game turn. And it doesn't say anything about facing. Why can't he? Facing, yay. So the facing of any units in melee, this is not the same thing, but the facing of any units in melee combat may be rearranged by the owning player when melee is concluded. Which again is not the same thing, but I guess I don't see this game as being so strict that they can't just change one hex side. There's so many rules I would consider on my own, but anyways, alright, so here, the pinned unit, by the way, can definitely not withdraw before melee. So that much I know. So now let's see how I actually do the melee. Now let's start with the melee. Now we're in the melee. Now we're in the melee phase. Phasing infantry and cavalry units which begin this phase adjacent to enemy units may now enter the hex occupied by the enemy unit and engage in melee combat. So, does it matter? I don't know. They're all in the same hex. The melee combat is resolved and retreat and casualty results are applied as a result of the melee combat. This is the melee phase. They're in line, so they can melee, line formation. This is not, artillery is not getting attacked in melee. This is not cavalry. They are meleeing the same enemy unit they fired at in the previous fire phase. Again, they're not in column, they're in line formation, so they're eligible to melee. A unit may change facing only during a friendly movement phase or after melee. Alright. Maybe that means they can't do that. Something I would do different. Effects facing on melee. A unit may only advance through one of its frontal hex sides into a hex. We did that. These are frontal hexes they crossed. The facing of any units in melee combat may be rearranged by the owning players with melee. It's concluded. We already talked about that. Before melee phase, retreat before melee phase, fire combat. Okay. Melee capabilities. Alright, this is not artillery. Okay, but there is pinned. Units in a pinned hex may not move except to retreat as a result of melee, not before. Alright, they specify that. So that pinned unit could not have retreated before melee. Pinned units may use withdrawal fire and retreat fire. They may not initiate melee, although they may engage in melee when so attacked. They may not retreat before melee. Specified again. Pin markers are removed in the friendly rally phase. Once a pinned unit is meleeed, it becomes unpinned. Remove the pin marker from that unit. That's good to know. So they are not pinned anymore because they're being meleeed. And that makes perfect sense. Withdrawal fire. We already did withdrawal fire. A unit out of ammunition may move and engage in melee normally. It's good to know. Alright, this hand-to-hand fighting. As a result of melee, units may be captured, suffer casualties, be forced to retreat, and possibly be routed, or remain engaged in the melee. Melee may occur only in the melee combat phase. Alright. So this is, in order for a unit to melee, I'm wondering, I have two units meleeing here. Do they melee separately, or do they melee as a combined group? This looks like it's 1-to-1, because it's a differential. The differential is -4 to +6. Funny that I haven't seen this specified yet, but well, let's continue on here. So in order for a unit to melee with an enemy unit, it must begin the friendly melee phase adjacent to that enemy unit. Then in the melee phase, it moves into the hex with the enemy unit. The melee strengths of the units, but that's the enemy and the friendly, are compared, and the resulting combat differential is then used in reference to the melee CRT. The melee CRT is a differential CRT. The combat ratio is expressed as a difference between the total strength points of the attacker and the total strength points of the defender. The defender's points adjusted for leaders. Infantry and dismounted cavalry units always melee with their current combat strength. Restrictions on ability to engage in melee. To engage in melee, unit must begin in friendly. We got that. Must be able to move into the hex. Units may never fire one unit and melee another. We're not doing that. Melee is not mandatory. Just because you're adjacent, you don't have to do melee. Infantry and column may never melee. Guns and wagon crews. Effects of terrain. Any units that enter an enemy-occupied hex for melee purposes by crossing a stream or moving up crest. Oh, they're both moving up crest. Have 1 point subtracted from their total melee strength. So Well, I have to know if I'm supposed to combine or not. I have to know. So, if they're separate, then it's 4 to 5 and 2 to 5. But if they're combined, then it's 6 to 5. I guess it's... I'm going to... Well, I guess I'll start by combining them because it... Here's an example. An infantry regiment... No, that doesn't apply. Example, 2 Union units, both with a morale rating of 2, initiate melee. Okay. So it can be multiple units. It looks like. Okay. I'll combine them. So I'm subtracting 1 from each of them for meleeing up the crest. So it's 4 plus 2 is 6. Against 5 is just a differential of plus 1. They are meleeing not only up the crest but in the cornfields. Does that do anything? I moved away from that chart. I'm not going to do anything for that. All right, let's roll on that. Ooh, 6 on the plus 1 attack. So there's nothing to the defender. Wow, nothing's going to happen to the 1st Texas there. This is devastating for them. C1 R2. C1 2 or 3. That number of strength points is captured by the enemy. Well, I guess we. How do I figure out which one's which? And then R2. Units must retrieve that number of hexes, then perform a morale check. Do they have to stay together? Oh, and they retreat from the morale hex, I guess. Effects of morale and rout. No. Results of melee combat. Let's do that. As a result of melee, units, strength points of both sides may be captured, blah, blah, blah. We don't have a K result. We have a C result. Okay. What? Do you do this in order? I guess. A result of a C plus a number indicates the number of combat strength points that have been captured. The affected unit. How do I know which one's the affected unit? Okay. I don't know, but I'll take it from the stronger unit. So I guess I go 4, which is reducing this one by 1 strength point. I guess that would have to be notated somewhere that it was captured. I guess. Now they C1 R2. Yeah. And I guess I'll have them retreat as 1, 2. But I wonder if they could split up. And then they have their morale checks. I guess I'll go top to bottom. Top passes. They both pass. They both have morale of 5. Yeah. There we go. So it was a big loss of ground. It was more of a quick, sharp repulse, I guess.